Good morning and welcome to Boston Outlook. I'm your host, Julie Mara. Joining us on the line this morning is Meghan Rothschild. She is a melanoma survivor and is also on the board of directors for the Melanoma Foundation of New England. Meghan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is great to have you on. I understand that, now we're approaching May, and May is Melanoma Awareness Month, so it's perfect timing to have you on.
Absolutely. It's when people start to plan for the warm summer months. They start to get their bikinis out and, plan their Memorial Day activities. And so it's a really great month to just kind of start talking about the disease so we can be aware of it.
Definitely. And I mean, anytime I hear of anything involving skin cancer, melanoma is probably like the number one buzzword that kind of goes with that topic. So Tell us your story. I know you're a survivor. It's been, 9 years?
Yes. It's been over 9 years. My story, it really starts when I was 17 years old. Like any other teenage girl out there, I had a lot of insecurities, hated the fact that I had a fair complexion. I'm of Irish and German descent, so definitely have the fair skin, redhead look going on. And so I started to use tanning booths. I had never been able to achieve a tan through just going out in the sun. I would always get kind of splotchy burns. I think everybody, has had a sunburn at one point in their life. And so I sought the advice of a family friend who was actually a nurse. And she told me that using a tanning booth was a really great way to get vitamin D, and it was a controlled environment, UV exposure, and it was a safe way to get a tan. So did that for about 2.5 years and noticed a suspicious-looking mole on my abdomen. It had started to change, started to itch. And I pointed it out to a primary care physician, not really thinking anything of it, but just kind of having a weird feeling. And so the doctor actually told me it looked fine and I didn't need to have it removed. And I said, well, I don't know, something just is off about it. I'd prefer to get it removed. And I kind of had to push, to be honest.
Wow.
And I always like to kind of pause and take a moment to reiterate that, because a lot of the people that I've met throughout doing this speaking out about it, have had similar stories where they point something out to a primary care physician and they tell them it's fine, and then all of a sudden it becomes melanoma.
That's scary.
It's really scary. And so, after I had the mole removed, I went back in about a week later to have the stitches taken out, and this doctor came into the room, who I had never even met him. He wasn't the doctor who performed the initial surgery. And I'm 20 years old at the time. It's my sophomore year of college. And he says, "Is there anyone here with you?" And I remember thinking, well, that's kind of weird. Why does he think I need to have someone here with me to just have stitches out?
Right. Somebody needs to hold your hand.
Right. Exactly. I'm 20. Hello. So I said, no, it's just me. And he said, there's really no one out in the waiting room that I can go get for you. And I said, no, why? And he looked at me and he said, I hate to have to tell you this when you're sitting here alone, but you have melanoma.
Oh, my gosh.
You're 20 years old, and he starts throwing out words like cancer, survival rate, lymph node extraction, and the only thing that I could think of was, you're an idiot, you did this to yourself.
Wow. Now, I'm sitting here doing the math, and I'm assuming you're about 28, 29?
29, yep.
Okay,
exactly.
So we are exactly the same age, so this conversation is really going to hit home. It's like,
hitting home.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing what you're saying, and I can't believe that somebody would instruct you to go to a tanning bed. I mean, I'm of the same era of you, and that was like a no-no in my family. Like, do not go near a tanning bed, like when you're getting ready for proms, and my mom's like, no, you are not allowed, like, absolutely no way. I can't believe someone instructed you.
Yeah, you know what? My mom actually was so adamant about me not going, but I was 17. I had my own car. I had my own job. Forget it. Like, after school, that's where I went. I went to the tanning booth.
Oh,
and
my
she
gosh.
would, she'd look at me and say, your face is really pink. And I'd say, oh, yeah, I'm using this new cleanser, and it irritated my skin.
Oh,
totally
no.
lied, like
Oh,
every
my
other
gosh.
teenage girl.
Right? Oh, see, the price that we end up paying for beauty. People don't understand it. And at 17, sounded like a great idea.
Exactly. And I just wanted to have a healthy, I'm using quotation fingers here, a healthy tan. And I wanted to look like everybody else.
Wow.
So that's what I ended up with.
What was the rate at which you were going tanning? I mean, were you going every day? Were you going every other day? What was the rate at which you were getting this sun, quote unquote, exposure?
Right. I was actually going once a week. That's it. So a lot of people who hear that I had a cancer diagnosis automatically think that I was abusing it and that I was going every day. But in reality, I was only visiting once a month, once a week. And, the statistic is visiting a tanning booth just once a month will increase your risk of melanoma by 75%.
Oh my gosh.
So people don't realize that once a week is just, is bad. It's terrible. And, the UV rays that are found in tanning booths are 3 to 6 times the strength of the sun. So even just doing that once a week, like I know people through all the, speaking that I've done who go 3 to 4 times a week. I was only going once a week. You can imagine what their increased risk is by going multiple times per week.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's such a young age. And I mean, it seems like this really just came pretty quickly. You started tanning at 17, at 19, 20 years old, you're now diagnosed with melanoma. Was there anything in your past that you could almost pinpoint to see, like, had you had multiple sunburns growing up and just kind of increased your odds?
Yeah, I had probably maybe 3 really bad sunburns before the age of 18. And we know now that any sunburn before the age of 18 does severely increase your risk of melanoma. And like I was saying at the beginning, everyone's had a sunburn, especially us here in New England, where we have this intermittent exposure to the sun.
Right.
And so, I definitely had I can remember at least 2 blistering sunburns. And that does increase your risk. But the mole on my abdomen had been there for a really long time. It wasn't a new mole. It just started to change, and that is an indication of a cancerous spot.
I hate to pry, but was it like specific colors? I want to just kind of paint the picture for people who may be, wondering what to look for.
It was really, really dark. It was smaller than a pencil eraser. There's actually some warning signs of melanoma, and it didn't meet all of the criteria. It was tiny, and it was just jet black, and it was raised.
Wow.
And those can be some indicators of melanoma.
So at that point, now you're in a doctor's office, totally alone, and this doctor has just basically dropped this news on you. What was your reaction? How did you feel?
Oh, I felt terrified. I mean, being there alone, and it was no fault of anyone that I was there alone. Nobody thought certainly that was not a thought in our mind. Like, Meghan's going to get diagnosed with cancer today. It was like, mole's getting removed, no big deal.
Right.
So my first instinct was, how do I get through this? How serious is this? What do I have to do? But again, this doctor launched into, you're going to have major surgery. We're going to have to do a clearing of the margins. We're going to have to take lymph nodes out. And it just was like this incredibly terrifying conversation. And I left the doctor's office and immediately called my mother. And she was just beside herself because, in her opinion, she had always known that I was maybe going tanning, but never did anything to really, in her opinion, never did anything to stop me.
Right.
Except for to tell me over and over again I shouldn't be doing it. It was just a really scary moment.
But at that point, you're an adult, so I mean, you're making your own choice. Mm-hmm. So even if she was kind of forcing her beliefs on you, like don't go and tan, you're over 18, so it's your choice at that point.
And not only that, but I was 2 hours away at school at college.
Oh, so then, all right, then all bets were off for her, I'm guessing,
she
right?
had no idea what was going on.
So now you're, still 2 hours away when you've got this diagnosis? Am I adding this up right?
Yep. So basically, I would be battling cancer my sophomore year of college. I can talk a little bit about the treatment. It was because of the depth of my mole. We knew we were going to have to take lymph nodes. So what happened after my initial diagnosis was I was back and forth between Rhode Island and Western Massachusetts, just going for all sorts of preliminary doctor's appointments and blood tests and family history reports and all of that. And my surgery was scheduled for less than a month from when the mole was diagnosed as melanoma. They wanted to get me in really quickly. So I went in for the surgery on February 13th of 2004, and they put me under. They took a huge area of skin on my abdomen where the mole was located because they have to clear that area of skin to make sure there's no cancer cells, bleeding out into that area. Then they had to go in and take 7 lymph nodes from under the left arm, 1 from under the right. And really the worst part of the surgery was they didn't realize they were going to have to sew drainage tubes into the incision.
Ooh.
Because what happens is when you have this major surgery, you can have lymphatic fluid buildup, and it can prevent healing properly. So I woke up literally like I just think of like a robot. Like I had tubing coming out of me, and I had to empty these tubes every 3 hours because they would fill up with this fluid. And so I remember saying to myself, how are they going to get these tubes out? This has got to be, they're not going to reopen these incisions, so how is this going to happen? And I went back in 3 days later, and this doctor looked at me, and he said, this is going to hurt. And I said, what's going to hurt? And he, put his hand on my stomach to brace me and yanked the tubes out of the incision.
Oh, my gosh.
So, I always say to people, when you hear that I had skin cancer, a lot of people will say, oh, it's just skin cancer. That's no big deal. It is a big deal.
Absolutely.
It's a major, major deal, and it can be deadly. And I don't think we're at the point now where the majority of people know that.
I totally agree. I mean, I am very afraid. I mean, I've gotten sun poisoning just recently, a few summers ago. I went to Bermuda, and I was taking precaution. I had the sunscreen. I was putting it on multiple times throughout the day, and it still wasn't enough. And I came back and was totally blistered, and I refuse to let my back go near the sun now. I just refuse, because it just, all it takes is, like you said, 1 or 2 times, and there goes your odds. They shoot right up.
Right. And, I don't think people realize that sunburns are so bad for you. And, the other part of this is that people don't understand that, a lot of people will think, okay, sunburn's bad, so I'm going to get a tan, because that way I'm protecting my skin from getting this blistering burn. There is no such thing as a safe tan. A tan is your body's response to DNA damage. And so people don't realize getting that nice base tan before you go somewhere so that you can prevent burning is just as harmful to the largest organ in your body, which is your skin.
And I think a lot of people don't even realize that skin is an organ sometimes. It's just something that we take for granted. It's like, oh, it's our skin. You don't think of it as being something that's alive.
Right. And it's exposed to so many toxins every day, and just the UV rays. I mean, we really, and with melanoma, it's the only cancer that shows itself right there on the outside of your body. So, and it's right there on your skin. And so it's just, we torture our skin, not even realizing what we're doing to it.
It's amazing that something we think is so beautiful and it makes you look good and feel good is really the total opposite.
Oh, yeah. It's really unfortunate because, it was really, not to blame someone specifically, but Coco Chanel, when she invented the bikini, this is when the tan became popular. And it's so distressing to me to see young people, because I was there too. I hated having fair skin. I just hated it. And I know that it's a hard struggle for young women in particular, but also young men. I hear so many young men now and older men say, oh, I look so much better with a tan. And it's just it's really incredible to me to think about how we've, the perception has just been so ingrained in us over the last, couple of centuries or, couple years. And it's just incredible to realize that, what society views as beautiful really has so much impact on people.
So now we're pushing a decade for you personally. You were diagnosed in 2004. So does it seem like the perception has stayed stagnant over this last decade?
No, absolutely not. I will tell you, when I first started giving lectures and speeches about this, I would ask people, how many of you know a tan can kill you? And, maybe 1 or 2 would raise their hand. And I'd say, okay, how many of you know that, melanoma is a deadly form of cancer? And, a couple would raise their hand. Now, everybody knows. Whenever I go out and I speak and I say things, I say, are you aware that tanning is bad and all this? And do you think a tanning booth is good for you? And people now are like, no, we know better. So I think we're at a point now where we're not as well aware as we are about lung cancer and breast cancer and prostate cancer, but we're getting to a point where more people understand the dangers.
Are you seeing more younger people being aware and, almost schooled as they grow up?
Yeah, we don't have, I don't feel in this country we have proper education at the secondary level that talks about skin cancer. We have, you think back to high school, you've got the safe sex talk, and you talk about not smoking and not drinking. Nobody talks about safe skin behavior, and melanoma is the second most common form of cancer for young people ages 15 to 29. And it's the only cancer in this country where the incidences are actually increasing. Every other cancer is on the decline because we've had tremendous awareness campaigns, and people know to do prostate exams and breast exams and get mammograms, but skin cancer is still on the rise. And so it's, it's incredible because people understand it, but I just don't think we are, we're not there yet. We're not where we are with lung cancer and breast cancer and those other types of cancer.
Specifically here in the Northeast, I mean, we always hear of, people in the Northeast are vitamin D deficient and this vitamin deficient and this and that because of the lack of sun. So do you think that people are taking that information and almost running with it as almost an excuse to get more sun in the summer months?
I do. And, New England actually has the highest rates of melanoma in the country. And the reason for that is because, again, of this intermittent exposure. So for months, we don't see sunlight because we're in cold or fall or spring, summer months where we're just not seeing the sun. And then the summer comes along and everybody's outside, laying on the beach. They're, laying in their backyard. They want to get that tan. They want to get the vitamin D. But that's what's causing, our skin is really sensitive in New England because we have intermittent exposure. We're not exposed on a regular basis. So I think that people think about the vitamin D argument as, my doctor said I was vitamin D deficient, so I've got to go out and get sun. When in reality, there's plenty of healthy ways to get vitamin D, like eating vitamin-rich foods, drinking milk, taking a supplement. You can even get prescription strength supplements for vitamin D. There's just so many other ways to get it than going out in the sun. And realistically, 2 to 3 times a week of 5 to 10 minutes worth of sun, just walking to your car back and forth, is adequate for you to get your vitamin D. But people tend to definitely take that vitamin D message and kind of, I think, stretch it a little bit, with, I got to get my vitamin D, I got to get my healthy dose.
Right. That's the excuse for the people who have already been, out at the beaches over the last month,
Right.
Working on
Exactly.
that quote unquote base tan. I mean, it always surprises me that first, nice day of the season where you get to go out, you get to stroll down the beach, the windows are down, the music is up, and you see these people who look like they've been, tanning all winter. It's like, how did you get to this point? And it's like, obviously, we know you've been tanning all winter. It's just amazing to me. And then they're out there for 3 months straight. It boggles my mind. I mean, we're from the same generation, so I was brought up with the same, knowledge of all of this as you were. And it's just unbelievable that people are still out there doing these behaviors. But again, it's your own choice, and we can only help to raise the awareness this morning. If you're just tuning in, we are chatting with Meghan Rothschild. She's a melanoma survivor and is serving on the board of directors for the Melanoma Foundation of New England. So obviously this experience has turned you in a positive direction. You're here this morning to talk about it. How did you get hooked up with the foundation?
It's actually a really funny story. After my initial diagnosis, I, went through what I think every cancer survivor goes through. You have this full year of just total and utter depression. And with my cancer, because it was skin cancer and it was behavioral related with the tanning and the being out in the sun with no SPF, I really blamed myself. And so for a year, I kind of just sunk into myself and didn't want to, talk about it. But I was working as a freelance writer for a paper in Rhode Island where I was going to school. And they found out about my cancer diagnosis, and they asked if I would share my story and do a firsthand story. So once I did that, it kind of became this mission, this life calling, because it got picked up by the East Bay newspapers. And then before I knew it, the Skin Cancer Foundation called me and said, hey, can you come to New York City to be in Marie Claire magazine? We're going to have you pose in the center of Times Square. And I'm like, yeah, I think I can do that. And all of a sudden I started getting all these emails and people just contacting me saying, you're so brave. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm going to have, I'm going to tell my daughter. I'm telling my sister. I'm telling my mom. And it became kind of like this, okay, this happened for a reason. And now I need to leverage it. I need to really take this and run with it. So on a whim, one day I just emailed the Melanoma Foundation and said, hey, I've been doing interviews like nonstop for this disease because it was a real hot ticket when I was younger, because it was just, they were looking for young melanoma survivors because it was becoming so common among my age group.
Mm-hmm.
And they wrote back and just said, let's get you involved. Let's get you volunteering. We'll get you here. We'll get you there. And after a few years of volunteering, they asked me to be on the board. So it's kind of been where I've been ever since.
Wow. So it's like you were almost on tour.
Yeah.
And they
I
picked
was.
you up.
It was incredible. After I did the Marie Claire thing, the American Academy of Dermatology called and literally said, will you do a media tour for us? We're going to have you be in this campaign. And so I went out and I did a campaign with them, and then they asked me to go to New York City and do media interviews. So I got to do, Inside Edition and the Mike and Juliet show and ABC World News. It kind of blossomed into this like, oh my goodness, this is national at this point.
Yeah.
So, things like this, I like to say they happen for a reason.
Absolutely.
There was a reason.
So what have you taken away from this entire experience?
I've taken away, obviously survivorship. That's a huge part of who I am now, honestly. I am a melanoma survivor. A lot of people will say my cancer didn't define me. My cancer did define me. Like, it has become my life mission, and I'm okay with that. Because in order to get over this and get away from the fear, the constant fear of a reoccurrence and all of that, it's cathartic for me to talk to people about it and to just share with anyone who is willing to listen. And so really this experience has helped define me in a personal way, but also in a professional way. And I'm actually, it sounds really weird, but I'm grateful for it.
You always try to find the positive in everything, and it sounds like you have. And just talking with you this morning, you have so much energy. You're just so full of life, and you've really done something so positive to help people here in Boston and Massachusetts and even across the country. So good job with that. You've also launched your own website, correct?
I have, yes. When I first started doing the speaking, before I was paired up with the Melanoma Foundation, I started doing like high schools and colleges, and people would say, oh, do you have a website or do you have an email address? And it finally dawned on me, I need to put something together. So I worked with a friend who does website development, and I started this website that has kind of some basic facts provided by the Melanoma Foundation. It has all of my media appearances that I've done, and it just is a way for people to contact me if they want to bring me out to their school, because this continues to be a popular topic now with college health educators and high schools that want to raise awareness about it. So it's becoming more popular. More people want to start having this conversation, which is great.
Definitely. And what do you see over the course of, the summer is approaching, so, the summer months are here. What is next for you?
Next for me, I'm going to keep on doing this. Like I've paired up right now with the National Women's Survivor Convention. These two women started this organization that they host a convention every year for women who have survived cancer. And it's out in Nashville, Tennessee this August, and they want me to come out and share my story there because they have no skin cancer representation. They just have breast and colon and all that. And so they want a skin cancer person to come out. So what's next for me is just continuing to find ways to share my story. I literally will travel anywhere. Even, if you could talk to the executive director of the Melanoma Foundation, she would attest to that. Like, I'm on the road all the time, and luckily my full-time job is super supportive of it. So it's, in terms of what's next for me, just keep getting the message out there as much as possible.
So what advice can you give to young people specifically who may have just been recently diagnosed or are still, once you're a survivor, you got to stay on yourself. So what advice can you offer these people listening this morning?
Yeah, once you're diagnosed with melanoma, you're at a greater risk to get it again, unfortunately. And so for anyone out there who's recently diagnosed or who, is afraid of a diagnosis or has family members who have been diagnosed, first and foremost, you have to know you're not alone. This is a very common cancer. And so there's so many resources through the Melanoma Foundation for support and programs that we have. We have Billy's Buddies, where you hook up with a survivor, someone who's already been through it, and just kind of talk, and they help coach you through it. And, what I always say to people who are really worried about reoccurrences, especially the ones who have survived it and gone through it, you caught it. It happened for a reason, and now you know what to do. You know to visit a dermatologist on a regular basis. You know to watch your skin. You caught it early. And that's really the key to melanoma is it's such an easily preventable disease, and it has to be caught early. So it's just about paying attention to your skin, knowing what spots you have, looking for new areas that'll pop up or new spots that might pop up, and being your own health advocate.
Definitely. I think you just hit the nail on the head with that last piece there. Self-advocation. You've got to push yourself. You really have to be your own advocate. And if you hadn't, then things probably would have turned out differently. So.
Oh, yeah. And I say that to people all the time. I have people come up to me and say, what do you think about this spot? And my response is always, I'm not a dermatologist. Like, I'm not. Maybe I should have been in another life. Maybe I should have been. But that's not my area of expertise. And, for people who are out there thinking, well, I don't want to deal with this. It's so easy to go to the dermatologist once a year and get a full body scan. It's just easy. It takes literally 20 minutes. You go in, they check every spot on your body, and they tell you if things need to be taken off. And that's the bottom line. You get something taken off, and it's a much easier thing to go through than having to get getting to a point where you're at a melanoma diagnosis.
Absolutely.
It's incredible, how easy it is to prevent this disease if we know what to look for.
I've even noticed my own primary care will ask, oh, do you have any new moles? Or, oh, I know you have a mole on your face. What other moles do you have? And they actually kind of have taken note of that. At least for me over the last couple of years or so, I've noticed that they're really in tune to that when you go for a physical.
That's great because, I hear mixed things about that. Like I have some people say my PCP is all over it. They check me every time. And then I have others who say my primary care never looks at my skin. And, my feelings are always a dermatologist is someone who is just completely, they have to take the medical boards and then they have to take the dermatology boards. Like they're completely trained on what to look for on the skin. They know what to pay attention to. And frankly, most dermatologists, when you say, I want this taken off, even if they don't think it's suspicious, they'll do it just for your peace of mind.
Absolutely. Right.
And that's what it's about, having peace of mind.
So then you've gotten to the right doctor.
Exactly. And I always say, if people say, well, my doctor won't write me a referral to a derm, or my derm says, no, I shouldn't get it taken off, I say, find a new doctor.
Right. And that's, it's the other thing, and there's, insurance that comes into play. And it was a higher copay when I had to go see a dermatologist a couple of months ago, but it's well worth it. And like you said, the peace of mind right there, that's priceless. It really, really is. So
absolutely.
I just, I'm so grateful that we've had this conversation this morning. You're so full of energy. I love it. You have offered so much to our listeners, our show this morning. Meghan Rothschild, melanoma survivor, serving on the board of directors for the Melanoma Foundation of New England. And honestly, I feel like we're going to have a conversation in the near future, and you are just going to be totally all over national awareness. So keep it up.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We'll have you back on soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
That concludes this week's edition of Boston Outlook. I'm your host, Julie Mara. If you or someone you know has an idea for the show, feel free to contact me directly at Julie, Julee, .Mara, MARRA, @cbsradio.com. Thanks for listening and have a great weekend.